And it's not the tool that makes the difference. It's the manager and the employee behind the tool.
Absolutely.
It's the relationship. It's the people that matter. And I think don't see technology as the solution. See it as the support aid. The solution is the design. The solution is that employer-employee relationship where technology then supports and enables. But technology is not the be-all and end-all. It's just one of the tools.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Neha at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award that's specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and channel that receives more than 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Robert Mosley, owner and CEO of Lemon Pip Consulting Limited, which is a human resources consulting business that has been running for a great 15 years. Being a global compensation and benefits expert, Robert conducts public training courses and consulting projects on the same. He was awarded the Global HR Leadership Award by the World HR Congress in 2017 for his iconic work in the field of compensation. His areas of expertise include job descriptions and grading, salary structures and pay scales, bonus scheme designs, performance management, appraisals, and many more. We are thrilled to learn all about this and more through our conversation today with Robert this fine evening. So welcome to peopleHum, Robert. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the interview questions. So yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So Robert, can you tell us more about your HR consulting business, Lemon Pip Consulting Limited? We're just very intrigued to know how it came to be, what the process has been like, and what is the kind of work that you do there?
Sure. I actually started my working life in consulting, working for one of the big four human resource consulting companies called Hay. In those days, it was called Hay Management Consultants, and then it became Hay Group. Now, many of you will know it as Corn Ferry Hay. And I spent 6 years with Hay back in the 1980s. And one of my clients was a brand new airline in Dubai called Emirates, literally a startup airline. And I left Hay to join Emirates. And I ended up spending 13 years in Dubai as the Senior Vice President, Human Resources at Emirates Group. Fantastic time. Left Emirates to do another startup airway, Qatar Airways, 2 years with them in Qatar. Left them to do another startup airline, Etihad in Abu Dhabi, and had 2 years with them. And then I was going to retire after lots of lovely years tax-free living in the Middle East. But I just got so many phone calls from people saying, oh, we hear you're retiring, and can you help us on a project? And can you help do some training for our team? That before I knew it, a consulting business grew up. And so just for fun, I called it Lemon Pip Consulting because it was never intended to be serious. It was just like a 1 year bit of fun. And as you say, that was 15 years ago. And here we are today. Lemon Pip celebrated its 15th birthday yesterday when I also celebrated my 60th birthday. It's just one company, me, all on my own. And I'm doing work with hundreds of companies all over the world, specializing specifically in grades, compensation, employee performance, and all the quantitative side of HR. And yeah, from big blue chip companies like IKEA and Samsung and Microsoft and Heinz to small little 10-man trading companies all over the world in all different industries, it is great fun. Plus, of course, doing lots of training and lecturing and just really enjoying sharing the knowledge.
Definitely. That sounds very interesting, Robert. That tells me that we have a lot of your stories in store for us through this interview.
Some that I dare not mention.
Yeah. You hold expertise in compensation and benefits, and you were also awarded the Global HR Leadership Award. So So could you enlighten our audience on the rising importance of compensation and how it has changed since the pandemic, maybe based on some experiences that you've had before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and possibly also where you see the future of compensation as a concept going into?
So I actually ended up in compensation by total accident. Because when I came out of business school and everyone on the MBA course was applying to strategic management consulting companies, that's what I was doing as well, applying to McKinsey and Bain and Boston Consulting Group. And I applied to another management consulting company called Hay Management Consultants. And I had no idea that they were human resources. I thought they were a strategic consulting company and thought, yeah. And it was quite a shock, my very first day at Hay, to discover that they were actually a human resources consulting specializing in compensation.
Right.
But thankfully, I had a degree in maths from Oxford, and it was actually an unbelievably lucky break because it was all about people, which I love, but also all about numbers, compensation. And there's not many people who are good at both. A lot of people in HR are very good as people, but they're no good at numbers. Or they're very good at numbers, but no good at relating it to employees and talking to managers. And I found very early on that I was actually really lucky and I could do both. I think as a function, compensation has always been important in HR because at the end of the day, why do people work?
Exactly.
They work for money. Exactly. And if you don't get money right, well, then the whole relationship between the employer and the employee is really not going to be a good one.
Yeah.
So I think, if anything, HR has underestimated the importance of comp and ben in the last 20 years. But fundamentally, it's one of those building blocks that you've absolutely got to get right. And only when you're paying your people correctly and getting over the lack of motivation. But money isn't a motivator. If you get it wrong, it's a demotivator. If you get it right, it's a hygiene factor. It's neutral. And then other things will motivate an employee. So if you haven't got money, compensation right, well, then you're in trouble. Because all those other wonderful things you can do in HR are like sowing seeds onto stony ground. But if you've prepared the ground and you've got the seeds correct and money's right, well, then those seeds can grow. And so, yeah, it was a pure fortuitous discovery, a marriage of working with people and dealing with numbers. And I came across it as an absolute fluke. And I think many career breaks are lucky in life. And I've been very lucky.
Absolutely, Robert. And it's very nice to talk to somebody who has such a fresh perspective on compensation because, again, I feel like it is underappreciated and it should also be talked about more. So I really, really appreciate your insight on that. The next question is very related to what we just discussed, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask you anyway. So the nature of incentives and its contribution to long-term employee engagement is something that is debated upon. So what are your thoughts on it? And do you think that HR technology can help here? Because as is the rule with everything, as things change, as we have, let's just put it this way, as we have newer problems, we also have newer solutions to them. So the world is changing. It has remarkably changed over the past few months, and we might want to look at newer solutions to them. So in light of all of this, do you feel like HR technology can help here?
We all want a good boss to work for. We all want a job that we enjoy and is fun. We all want to be recognized by management and appreciated by our colleagues. And we all want career opportunities, the chance to grow.
Absolutely.
But underpinning all of that is we all want to earn money so that we can have a good living and pay our rent, buy our food, bring up our family, etc. So when it comes to incentives, there's three fundamental categories.
Right.
There's the short-term incentives, which I won't call incentives, I'll call bonuses. Bonuses looking backwards, recognition, as opposed to incentives looking forward. There's bonuses, which should be company-wide, all employees in a company-wide bonus scheme, excluding sales. We'll come on to salespeople in a moment. They'll be on incentives. So a company-wide bonus scheme, excluding the salespeople, linked to company profitability, company success, EBITDA, a short-term 1-year bonus scheme. That has to be in place. Okay. Parallel to that, if you've got bonus for core employees, you should have SIPs, sales incentive plans for the salespeople, where you deliberately put them in a slightly lower pay scale, make them hungry, so the basic salary isn't so good, and you deliberately exclude them from the bonus scheme. That's like giving someone an appetizer and then they won't want the main course, but then put them in a sales incentive plan. That's the main course. That's what they're going to be hungry for. So hungry that they desperately need to achieve their revenue and gross margin targets if they're going to earn their incentives. We've got bonuses, short-term incentives, SIPs for salespeople, and then for the very top of the pyramid, long-term incentives, 3-year, 5-year plans for the CEO and maybe the direct reports to the CEO, linked not just to 1-year short-termism profitability, but linked to 3-year, 5-year shareholder values, market value, company growth, etc. Now, all 3 of those pillars, bonuses, SIPs, and LTIPs, have to be underpinned by technology. The technology to measure performance of the company, performance of the employee. The technology to be able to track not just revenue, but gross margin. Any sales incentive plan that still relies on revenue is truly out of date. Got to be more sophisticated. It's got to be gross margin. And the technology to communicate it all and make it transparent, etc. But I don't think technology is going to have that big an impact.
Right.
Get the design right first and then use a technology to deliver, as opposed to choose the technology and then do the design. It's got to be design first, mission, vision, value, purpose, etc. And then, yes, thankfully the technology is to help us. And there's some great technology nowadays for managing performance of the company, performance measurement, managing performance of the employee. Good technology like Success Factors and Halogen and Connexa, to name 3. But it's not the technology that's going to make the difference. It's the design and getting it right. That comp expert, knowing the business, knowing what's important, knowing what the company needs, knowing what's going to drive and motivate employees, bringing it all together in those 3 tiers: bonuses, SIPs, and LTIPs.
Absolutely.
Just like a stool has 3 legs, and if one of those legs is weak, it's the same with incentives and bonuses and variable pay. If one of those 3 legs is weak, well, the other 2 aren't going to work.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate your insight on how technology is not just something that we require, but also on where and how to apply it. Because I feel like nowadays that everything is changing, it's easy to get intimidated, right? And it's easy to just start using things that are available, but then trying to understand.
And sometimes the simple solutions, like an Excel spreadsheet, are just as good as the complex stuff. And I think, if anything, there's a risk of too much emphasis on technology and artificial intelligence. I mean, you can do a perfectly good employee performance appraisal system simply using Excel. And it's not the tool that makes the difference. It's the manager and the employee behind the tool. It's the relationship. It's the people that matter. And I think don't see technology as the solution. See it as the support aid. The solution is the design. The solution is that employer-employee relationship where technology then supports and enables, but technology is not the be-all and end-all. It's just one of the tools.
Definitely. With respect to performance management, do you think that one-on-ones are not given the spotlight that it probably needs? So do you think leaders can expect minimal changes in the way that performance is tracked and managed? Or do you see a constant change in that domain for the past, say, 15 years in your experience?
If we look back over the last 30 years, from the mid 1980s until about 2 years ago, 30 years, the only thing that we talked about were KPIs, key performance indicators, which were fantastic as financial goals and targets for senior management. But let's face it, how do you set a KPI, an annual measurable number, for a receptionist, for a forklift operator, for an accountant, for an HR business partner? The reality is you can't. And yet for 30 years, we all did it. We all did KPIs from the CEO at the top down to the cleaner at the bottom. And in 2018, we saw a trickle away from KPIs towards something more one-on-one, something more monthly milestones rather than annual numbers, called MSCs. What are the must-dos, M, the should-dos, S, and the could-dos, C, MSC? What are the monthly MSCs that are discussed between the manager and the employee each month in the one-on-one, and come each month, they're self-assessed by the employee. Much more tangible, practical employee performance measures.
Absolutely.
And in COVID this year, with employees working increasingly from home, we've seen an explosion away from KPIs towards MSCs. Now you might not all know them as MSCs. Some companies call them OKRs, objectives and key results. Some call them EDAs, essential, desirable, and amazing goals. Some companies call them IRTs, in real-time objectives. But fundamentally, it's all about less importance on the annual figure and the end of year annual appraisal, and getting rid of it, getting rid of annual performance appraisals and replacing it by something that is far simpler, far easier, far more practical and pragmatic, monthly milestones underpinned by one-to-ones, where each manager has a one-to-one meeting with their direct reports, which shouldn't be more than 8. And the meeting could be face-to-face if you're lucky enough to be at work in the same building, in the same city. It could be virtual, like Zoom or Teams. But at least the manager and the employee talk once a week, or once a month. And it's a simple conversation. Takes 15 minutes, 5 minutes, what did you do last month? 5 minutes, what are you working on now? And what problems are you facing? And what can I, as your manager, help you with? And 5 minutes, let's talk about the priorities for next month. And at the end of that one-to-one meeting, you document the priorities for next month, the MSCs. What are the things next month that you must do? That is meeting expectation. Must means must. What are the things that you should do? Oh, but if you don't, it doesn't matter. And what's the wow factor? What's the thing you could do that would be truly impressive? And instead of once a year, big bang, 2 hours in an appraisal meeting, it's just once a month, 1 minute, 12 minutes a year. And oh boy, does that make a difference. And companies have really accelerated moving towards that during COVID-19 with people working from home. And as a tool for managing employees who are working remotely and working from home, it has been a game changer. And there's a big difference between those employers that trust their employees and have moved to working from home with MSCs versus those employers who think out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind means we don't know what you're doing. It's a massive game changer. And if anybody listening to this is still on annual key performance indicators, good old-fashioned key result areas and key performance indicators, then you really should be looking seriously at moving away from KPIs and moving towards MSCs or OKRs.
Absolutely. You've given us a lot to think about, Robert, and that was a very, very insightful answer indeed. Lastly, do you have any passing remarks for our audience?
Generally, if you, I get asked a lot at the moment, what do I think 2021 is going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, assuming we're going to get decent vaccines, which I hope we will, if I look ahead for the next 12 months, I was watching a movie at the weekend. It was a Clint Eastwood or Westwood, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So if I was to say, all right, 2021, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, the good, top performers are going to be in more demand than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And those employees who are delivering, those employees who are top performers are going to be in even greater demand than they ever were pre-COVID. That would be number one. And if you are a top performer, good times are ahead of you. Number two, I think we're going to see a fundamental shift in how employers value their employees. I guess the last 5 years, we've talked about employee engagement.
Yes.
But we haven't talked about the other side of the story, which was employer engagement. And if COVID has taught us anything, is that companies are not loyal to employees, most companies. Good companies are. And just like the company has to engage the employee, we've got to see the other side of the equation, which is the employee being engaged by the company. And that means trust.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about employee engagement on one side, and we're going to talk employer trust on the other. And working from home is not a temporary 1-year fad. It's here to stay. And those companies that embrace it, and those companies that trust their employees to work remotely and deliver are going to see way, way, way bigger performance improvements than those companies don't. So that would be my two goods. Top performers are going to be in even greater demand, and trust is going to replace engagement. The good, the bad, the ugly. The bad, I'm afraid to say, for the next 18 months, pay rates in the middle and lower paying companies are going to stay the same or even go down 5 to 10%. This is a tough market.
Yes.
And I guess we're going to see the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and we're really going to see the gap widen. The top 1% of employees are going to double their salaries in the next 12 months. The next 25% of employees are going to increase their salaries by 5, 10, 15%. But if you're in the middle bracket, or heavens forbid, the bottom 25% or the bottom 10%, you're going to see the pay markets contracting by 5 to 10%. So the gap is going to widen. That would be my bads. The ugly, oh boy, have we learned that there's two different types of companies out there today. There are the good employers that have done everything they can to avoid redundancy, even if it means pay cuts for the masses rather than 20% of people losing their jobs. And we're seeing some great employers who've really talked to employees and communicated about the problems we're facing them. But we've seen some ugly employers, that we're seeing some companies making employees redundant on one hand, their biggest asset, they're simply not valuing them, and yet continuing to pay big dividends to the shareholders. Well, companies have to look at themselves and say, really? Is that right? And the other ugly, seeing companies paying senior management big bonuses when the junior staff are taking pay cuts and job cuts. Again, it's just not consistent. And so good companies are going to shine, and the bad companies, the torch is going to find them out. And I think we're really going to see some big famous names almost get boycotted by the public. And we will see winners and we will see losers. And if you are a big famous name company and you're paying dividends to your shareholders while making your employees redundant, good luck. But no, I think there'll be some good news. There'll be some bad news. There'll be some ugly news. But overall, I think things by 2022 will look very positive indeed.
Definitely.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Vaccine first.
Yes, definitely. So, Robert, that was a very, very insightful conversation indeed. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I wish you and your business all the best.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And if anyone wants to reach out to me after this with any questions, my email address is robert@lemon-pip.com. I'm sure you'll share it with them. I'll happily discuss this in one-to-one if those of you are interested. Thank you. And season's greetings. Happy New Year. And may 2021 be a lot happier than 2020 was.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much once again.